TExES 8 Principal as an Instructional Leader exam contains a variety of questions called constructive response questions that can be difficult to understand and hard to tackle if you don't have the right approach to answering these questions. There are 4 constructive response questions on the PAIL exam. We're going to break down each of the 4 questions and how you should approach these questions when you're preparing for your exam. But first, let's talk about constructive response questions, what they look like, and how you can approach your thinking before you even dive in to each of these 4 questions. This is a School Rules Podcast special Principal as Instructional Leader breakdown. So what is a constructive response question? A constructive response question requires you to generate a response rather than selecting from given options like you would find on a multiple choice exam. So you might need to write a short essay, you need to explain your reasoning, solve a problem, and most importantly, provide details. And the thing about the Principal Instructional Leader exam is that they give you tons of evidence that you can look through, like lesson plans, exit tickets, student work examples, that you're expected to read and understand and use as evidence to justify how you are coaching this teacher. This is requiring you to think analytically, think critically, to reason with the information that's given to you, and communicate clearly on the exam. So I bet you're wondering, how do I even approach answering this question? Well, there's 2 types of writing that's going to be required in answering constructive response questions. One is called analytical writing. Analytical writing requires you to provide interpretations, justifications, and explanations with evidence. And evidence is going to be key when answering these questions. It's fine for you to provide your thoughts and your thinking and how you would approach coaching this teacher, but if you don't answer with given evidence that is provided in the question, you're going to get a lower score. The second type of writing that's necessary is called descriptive writing. And descriptive writing is very simply, what are you seeing and what are you reading? So when you go through each question and you see the scenario, it's okay for you to go in with a certain amount of expertise and say, this is what I'm seeing this teacher is doing, this is what I'm seeing this student is doing, and write that as a part of your description to answer your question. Now, when you take your test, or even when you take your practice test, please note there's going to be 4 constructive response questions that you'll have to answer. So a really good practice would be to read each one and try to get a sense for what each question is asking you. And then try to answer your easiest one or answer your hardest one first, depending on your energy level and where you are in the test. If you want to tackle your hardest question first, use all your brain power to get into that question and really tackle it and answer it the way that you know with all the justifications and details that you need, great. That's a really good strategy. Go in, knock out the hardest question first, and then progress your way through the easy ones. Or if you want to build up your confidence and try to tackle the hardest one last by answering the easiest ones first, that you know that you can answer these and spend the least amount of time on it, that's a really good practice as well. You just kind of need to know your own personality when approaching these questions. But more importantly than that, you need to break down each question that you get by reading the question components and ask yourself, what is the decision or analysis that I need to perform here? Ask yourself, is there a specific action that I need to list or that I need to take in order to support this teacher or these students? And is there a specific outcome that I have to create? These are the keys here: analysis, taking action, and creating an outcome. The first one is the difference between hard data and soft data. Hard data is verifiable fact from reliable sources. When you're going through the test, each constructive response question is going to be providing you with some evidence. This is hard, verifiable data. Anytime you can stop and refer back to this data when you're talking about how you would approach this situation or answer these questions, using hard data is always preferable. Second type is called soft data. This is sort of like qualitative info, ratings, surveys, polls, anecdotal information, things that you may have just read or heard, but you can't verify necessarily with a hard source. It's okay to refer to some of this soft data. You can use it as part of an investigation or to help drive your thinking, but you won't have any evidence to refer back to anything as part of your answering your question. So when possible, and if possible, always refer back to the evidence, refer back to what is provided to you in the question as your hard data source. The second definition you need to know is called high leverage practice or high leverage instructional practice. You'll see this term or this phrase throughout the test and throughout the questions. A high level instructional practice is basically a best teaching practice that you'll want to teach or coach your teacher to do. Let me give you some examples. High leverage instructional practices include things like pacing, alignment, or anything that's like an explicit instructional strategy, which is also known as differentiation. Another good list to familiarize yourself is the Marzano Instructional 9. This list of 9 high-powered, reliable instructional practices are the best research practices that you can use to help coach teachers to be better in the classroom. My advice is to familiarize yourself with these instructional practices, and it's always a good practice as an instructional leader to know maybe 2 or 3 of these instructional practices really, really well, so you can kind of pull them out of your back pocket and coach a teacher at any given time. So you'll want to know high-level instructional practices as a part of this test before you walk in. The next term you need to know is action steps. Action steps are very simply the things that you're going to do to help and coach this teacher to be better. And inside of your action steps, this is where you recommend or suggest high leverage instructional practices to make them better. So things that you would do as a part of your action steps are actually the coaching strategies. Coaching strategies would include maybe you're altering the lesson cycle, or you're going to model the skill. You might align the practice with a rigor, depending on what the student objective is, pacing, and coaching that pacing, or maybe it has something to do with lesson planning alignment. This is the opportunity for you to show that you can coach. So the action steps or the actionable steps, the things that you will do to help support this teacher. The last thing you need to know are guiding questions. Guiding questions and asking the right types of guiding questions is what's going to elevate your essay from just a good to a great essay. Essay graders on this constructive response question test are going to be looking for you asking good, high leverage guiding questions to help support this teacher. The idea is to show that you can coach, but you're not doing it for the teacher. You're actually helping the teacher think about their instructional practice and be better the next time they step into that lesson. Examples of guiding questions that you could ask throughout each of the CRQs would include: what specific strategies do you use to engage your students in learning? Can you describe a recent lesson that went exceptionally well and why you think it was successful? How do you assess student understanding and progress? And how do you use this information to inform your teaching? How do you foster a positive classroom environment and build relationships with your students? The point in asking these guiding questions is, again, to help to get the teacher to think about their instructional practice so that they can improve next time. This is well in line with the T-test expectations that the state of Texas has for principals when they evaluate teachers, and it gives the sense for the test makers and the test graders that you can actually coach a teacher, not doing it for them, but actually move them from where they were in the question to the next level. The idea is to show that you can coach the teacher to instructional improvement. Now, I know it seems like a lot, but if you go into the test already having a working knowledge of these things, you're going to do so much better when you approach these questions. Most of the time, students do poorly on the 268 test because they struggle with the constructive response questions. And most of it has to do with your approach, your understanding of the terms and the definitions, and how to break down each question. In subsequent breakdowns, we're actually going to look at each of the 4 questions and break down how to approach each one. Each one is different. Each one focuses on different domains, and each one is looking for something different in your instructional coaching. So we'll break down each of the 4 questions so that you get a better sense on how to approach each question. Now keep in mind, high-scoring essays will always focus on coaching teachers and providing those probing questions that are going to lead teachers to success. That's why the guiding questions are so important. Low-scoring essays will mention doing the work for the teachers or micromanaging. The test graders don't want that. They're not looking for that. They want to see you in action. They want to see you coaching. And most importantly, keep in mind, anytime the test mentions the principal, and anytime you see that word, keep in mind they're talking about you. You're the principal. You're the one approaching this. You're the one running this school. You're the one supporting the teacher in the question. The principal is you. Good luck. I hope you do great. We'll see you next time.